Remember that cricket is a funny game. 100 years before we protected our heads, players looked after their groin. So don't be as stupid as old cricketers. Protect your computer. NordVPN is the protection I use when facing cyber short balls or when the rights issue tried to dismiss me. NordVPN will help you get through the straight bat of any GEO blocks so you can watch all the cricket you want. If you need your pitch changed, well, NordVPN can doctor any surface to a new location so your IP address is set up for you to win. Want to buy an associate cricket shirt from a place that won't ship to your country? Select NordVPN. Want to watch a game on a free stream in another hemisphere? Give NordVPN the ball. Or if you just want to watch a clip on social media that the cricket board won't allow, promote NordVPN to pinch it. So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a cricketer protects their nether region with NordVPN today. Morning everyone and welcome to the Scoreboard. I am Jared Kimber. Let's start with the fact that jokes about Jimmy Anderson and Clouds just don't seem to hit as well on a day when he bowls like this. The delivery to get rid of Rohit Sharma was tragically unfair to any batter, and of course he finally picked up Jaiswal as well, so good for him. After that though, England kind of let India off the hook for a little while. There were many singles. I think part of the reason was that their spinners couldn't really nail a good length, maybe because their two best spinners, Joe Root and Jack Leach, are now both injured. But this also certainly allowed for India to get back in the game, and Shubman Gill made runs. Isn't it funny what happens when batters aren't always thrown in on volcanic wickets, that sometimes they can actually make runs on flatter pitches as well. But India still found ways to give wickets back to England. You have to give England a little bit of credit here as well because, I don't know, they're there and they're very good at manufacturing wickets, but it does feel like India are just kind of walking into the plan. You know, it's like India put the rake down on the floor and then stood on the rake at certain times. From our perspective, I think they just have a big enough lead to keep us all interested, right? To, you know, keep us still on the edge of our seats and everything else. But from England's perspective, they were willing to chase anything up until 600. So this is actually quite a substantial discount on what they thought they were going to be chasing. And they started the exact same way that we would all expect them to go about the chase, trying to Scotty Boland, Mukesh Kumar out of the attack. And then India forgot that Axar Patel and R. Ashwin actually play for their side. And once they remembered them, things did look a little bit different. But that's when we had Rayan Ahmed come out, the second ever Nighthawk. And he did Nighthawk. My particular favourite moment was when he slashed a ball away for 4 off the last ball of the day, but then was upset that he didn't hit it better. Oh, that's classic Nighthawking there for you. But we have a game. India still massively in front, of course, but there is a game. And that's the thing about Bazball is even when it doesn't work, it feels like it's working. And today, it felt like it was working. All right, let's start with the scoreboard. Remember, everyone, that at the end of the show, after the scoreboard part of the show, you can ask questions. I see there's DM, Andrew, Rahul, Ishan. There's a few people in the chat already who have asked questions. So feel free to put any questions in or any chats there. Like, subscribe, do all the magic things that you need to do. If you're desperate for a question to be answered at the end, always do a super chat. But if not, just ask away and let's see what we get to. And let's go over. I said, let's go over to the Nighthawk. I don't have any Nighthawk content. I don't think I have any Nighthawk content. I might buy a T-shirt of the Nighthawk and get Stuart Broad and Rayan Ahmed to sign it one day. Anyway, just thinking ahead. Let's start with Shubman Gill. And this is the KP tweet. So, Callis averaged 22 in his first 10 tests, and it turned out to be arguably the greatest player to play the game. Very arguably, but yeah, he's certainly up there. Give Shubman Gill some time to find it. So, it is interesting. The two players I kind of thought of when Kevin Peterson was talking about this was Callis, but also Steve Waugh. The difference between Callis, Steve Waugh, and Shubman Gill is that Callis and Steve Waugh were still able to bowl and were giving extra flexibility in the side. Whereas obviously Shubman Gill, well, his catching is quite good, but it's not that his catching is so ridiculous that changes things. But so if we have a look here, this is after first 22 matches, averaging 31.6. After the first 10 matches, averaging 22. And after the first 26 matches for Steve Waugh, averaging 30. I think the important thing to remember here is that these things actually do happen, right? That it's not going to be the only time that is ever going to happen. That doesn't mean that every time you have a great young batting talent come into the side that they are going to come good just because they've started very poorly, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I always look at a couple of things. How have they been in domestic cricket? And these days you can also factor in, white ball cricket if they're playing in that. And is there an obvious flaw in their game that means that they can't replicate what they did in domestic cricket if they were successful in the Test game? Those are the two things I'm looking for. With Shubman Gill, a bat away from the pad in a wobble ball era is an interesting thing. In fact, he can't really leave the ball anymore because of the angle that people bowl to him. I think is quite interesting. But I don't think it's enough for me to go, oh, he wasn't going to make any runs, which is what we've been talking about. I've been saying for a couple, the last test and a half. I didn't think it was as bad as everyone else thought it was. But, that's not how the internet works, Jared. But I did want to look at a couple of players. This is really cool. Whole script will follow me here. Cheyenne made this one. This is lowest batting averages before turning 25, minimum of 1,000 runs. So you've certainly got... Oh, actually, can we just shrink this down so we can get all the names coming up? It's just the format of this has gone wrong if Muku is listening, or Rakesh is listening. Just shrink the graphic down a little bit because we're just missing the names here so that people could see who we're talking about. But you can see here, this is Shubman Gill, 31.6 on his average there. Here we go. Now we've got all the names. Exactly what I wanted. So actually, before we get to him, I just want to say, so there's a few players down here. Dion Abraham, Muhammad Ashraful, you got Darren Ganga, Powell, Hope, Parker, etc. A lot of these guys didn't actually go on to have fantastic careers. So there's certainly a case to be said that they came in, they obviously had enough talent to be playing Test cricket before the age of 25, and it never quite worked out for them, and they never quite went on to have a brilliant career. There's a couple of players I just want to focus on, though, that are quite interesting, some of which are already highlighted, but I'll get to Cheyenne's ones in a minute, but there's a couple more that I wanted to talk about. Oh, God, I've lost him. This is Carl Hooper. So after this, by the time he turned 25, Carl Hooper was averaging 29 in Test cricket. If you look at late career Carl Hooper, there is absolutely no doubt that he was well above average Test match talent. He just took him a lot longer to work it out than anyone else, but he still ended up with quite a poor average, right? Like, he never really overcame this. I think he ends up averaging around 36, 37. So if you think in the first half of his career, averages around 28, and the rest of his career probably averages around 45, 46, and was still quite good towards even the back end of his career. He's an interesting one. Also, West Indies didn't have a lot of other batting talent. Again, Carl Hooper could bowl a little bit of spin, although I'd say he was in the team less. And there's another one I wanted to find, which now I can't find. Where are we here? This is Martin Guptill. So you can see his average is actually better than Shubman Gill's and way better than Carl Hooper's. But it was quite clear, I think, from early on that Martin Guptill's skills, of which he has a lot in batting, just weren't ever transplanting into red ball cricket. My memory is he struggled in county cricket as well, I want to say, but perhaps made some runs domestically in New Zealand. But he was never a hugely above average red ball batter in any format. Comes in and then, just can't really transform himself there. So you certainly then have, you have in Carl Hooper a player who really, really struggled and then got very good later on. And then in Martin Guptill, you have another player who just never really got any better. In fact, this might be one of the higher averages he had. But there's some really good players here as well. So Yunus Khan, I think Yunus Khan is certainly in the conversation for the top 20, 25 best batters of all time. His record is ridiculous when you consider how little home cricket he actually played as well. But even if you call the UAE's home, absolutely brilliant player. maybe one of the better players of spin we've ever seen. And yet, 1,000 runs at an average of 34 under the age of 25 is not particularly exciting. And weirdly enough, Mohammad Yusuf, again, certainly top 50, top 60 test batters probably of all time. And again, started very bad. And both of them, when they were young, probably would have played on pretty flat Pakistani wickets as well, right? So it doesn't always mean that you can't go on to be something quite special. You got Ollie Pope is in here as well. But then you got someone like Graham Wood, who didn't really go on. Stephen Fleming, who probably he was probably a slightly better player when he was older. Oh, there's another one. Even someone like Boycott here, who would go on to be, certainly a top 50 test batter of all time. So it doesn't mean that Shubman Gill isn't going to end in that situation. Doesn't mean he's going to be like Carl Hooper or Martin Guptill, but it is worth just remembering that not everyone starts the same way, right? And I think that is very, very important. But this is what we wanted to look at here. This is Shubman Gill's batting compared to other batters. So in the games that he's played so far, he averages 31.6, of course. The rest of the Indian batters are a good step above him, so an extra 7 runs, but they're only averaging 38. It's not like they're averaging 50 and he's averaging 31, right? Everyone's averaging in the 30s here. One's got a healthy average in the 30s and the other one's got an anemic average in the 30s. But if you come back down here, the opposition players, and remember they're quite often facing better bowlers than Shubman Gill, but they are averaging roughly the same. So I would say that he's still under par, but it's not as if the Indian batters are up here and the opposition batters are up here. He's within the margin of error, I think it's fair to say. All these things are just worth remembering with these sorts of things. And this is just his strike rate compared to different kinds of bowlers today. We talked about this with Jaiswal, and he's a little bit younger, but with Shubman Gill, just completely in control of what he needs to do. Against Anderson, probably played Anderson as well as most players did today, although maybe came on the back end of that really good spell. Obviously, Root injured himself and couldn't bowl. The two more experienced finger spinners, he knocked them around, but he made sure to cash in on Rayan Ahmed. This is good. This is what proper batting looks like, right? That's what we expect of him. That's why it has been so disappointing at times that he hasn't made more runs, because we know he has this available to him. You can see here, I'm pretty sure, if I remember these correctly, these are 2 cut shots. This one is a pull shot from a short ball, if I remember correctly. And the straight 6, I think that was around the time when he really started to look like the Shubman Gill that we have seen in white ball cricket and everything else. So fantastic effort by him. Worth pointing out that it was a relatively low-pressure third innings in that India had a big lead. I know that Jimmy Anderson had taken a couple of wickets. Shreyas Iyer was batting good at the other end. Certainly a nervy start. He got that that millimetre edge on the ball for the LBW, which even he didn't seem to know he got an edge on that one at that stage. It's weird because I thought batters always knew when they edged it. Anyway. So I think, you had that situation with Shubman Gill as well. But, really worked his way into this innings very, very well. And yeah, as I said, it was a low pressure third innings. But the two things I would say is they had lost a couple of wickets. And also, because of what England have been able to do in the first test, but also in Bazball so far, probably third innings are a little bit more high pressure than other situations. But it's still a third innings with a lead, right? So it's not... once you get to 30 or 40 not out and your team's up to 200 runs, 250 runs, whatever it may have been, that's a much easier way than being 50 runs ahead at that point. And all those things have to be factored in. But good work by him. He had some help from Axar Patel. We've talked about this a little bit before. This is his batting average in international cricket across formats. My memory of his first-class average... actually... I have to go back and have a look at that. But my memory of his first-class average was it got a little bit better as well over time. But you can see when he was the first in international cricket, he really was struggling a little bit. And then of recent times, it's gone up closer to 30. He's still a stretch at number 6, but they wanted the extra bowling option. That's... I think you can pick an Axar Patel or R. Ashwin type player to bat at 7, maybe not 6, but because of Bharat, it's going to have to be 6 in this one. But I think you can pick those sorts of guys when they're in their peak in one-off situations occasionally. Like for Ashwin, we knew that he could do it in Asia at his very best over a period of time, but that it probably wasn't going to last and it wasn't going to work in the long term. And we've seen South Africa do similar things as well. I don't have a huge issue with that, but Axar Patel batting at 6 all the time would probably cause problems for them going ahead. This is his batting average in formats. So you can see T20 cricket and IPL. So it's T20 International, sorry, in IPL. That's quite solid for someone who plays the way he does. ODI cricket, again, he's still... I'm trying to think of what his ideal role is. Occasionally it's going up the order and maybe capitalising in on some left-arm finger spin. More often than not, it's probably, coming in towards the end. And then in Test cricket, that's really, really healthy. Hasn't played as much overseas as some other players. Probably coming in around what should be, I should say, his peak batting years. But he's been fantastic. Got some runs on some wickets where it was a little bit easier to score when the ball got soft. A couple of series where I've seen him make runs, that's certainly been the case. You still got to stay out there and make the runs, right? Like, they don't give them to you, sadly. This is him against spin and pace. As I said before, you can have a look in limited overs cricket. He's quite often used as that sort of spin bowling enforcer, right? Of going up the order. I like the way he plays against spin. I like his movement. In fact, I've been watching Tom Hartley. Like I've been thinking with Tom Hartley, that Axar Patel's the guy I would watch. A similar kind of athlete. Another left-hander. He'd be the sort of person I'd be modeling my batting on. I think if I was I'd at least be hoping to get to near that level, but also just modeling some of the shot selections and everything that he does. And then we've got, this is his record right across all 3 formats. So you can see that in Test cricket, he's at his absolute best against spin and his absolute worst against pace. What this graphic really tells you is, more often than not, you will see a similar kind of split, because in Test cricket, it is harder to hide against the things that you're not very good at, right? Whereas in one-day cricket, if you're used correctly, you can hide a little bit more. But it's quite an interesting one today. And just wanted to have a look at Ponting. Ponting's talked about a few little technical changes and everything, and the way he's played. But the other thing I just want to talk about here is just the age, right? He's, once you start to hit that 28, 29, 30 period, you see this even with bowlers, right? They get to that sort of magical little period where batting just makes a little bit more sense to them. They understand the game. They understand how they can make runs or how they can stay in. And then, you then get to the point where perhaps they get to 33, 34 and their athleticism changes. Maybe, their back isn't as good anymore. Maybe they're not quite as fast as they used to be and their batting dips back down again. But certainly, a couple of technical changes, him understanding his game a little bit more, and I think that's fantastic. And just having a look at the way he scores, this is another thing I like about him. He is a limited player. I would argue that this is probably kind of one zone for him, and this is one zone for him. Keep it simple, stupid, right? As a all-rounder myself, like I wish I could just play my best shots all the time rather than trying every single shot that I can possibly play. And it's something I've noticed with Axar before, that sort of limiting his own options, which means he's just playing the shots he feels the most comfortable with. Another good knock from him today. All right, let's get on to the old fella. Jimmy Anderson here, as seen with many of his people that started playing at the same time that he did. He's obviously very, very old, and I think when a player gets to that certain age, we start judging everything that they do via the lens of their age, right? Like there was a few years back, you might remember there was a period when he wasn't taking wickets in the 4th innings. And at that stage, there was just a question of whether Jimmy Anderson was getting tired towards the end of games. And, we looked it up at the time. It's a hard thing to check because there aren't many 40-year-old fast bowlers. But it didn't really make any sense to us at the time, and then he bounced back. And I think it was a bit the same this time, with the Ashes. And let's be honest, Jimmy Anderson had a putrid Ashes. Darren Goff came into me today and said to me, "Are you sure? Sorry, can you check how many wickets Anderson took in the Ashes compared to this series?" And he's got 5 wickets in 4 tests in the Ashes, and he's got 5 wickets in 1 game in this series, which just tell you how bad it was before. Obviously, these two. Oh, I forgot to put my thing here. Sorry, this is the Ashes. This one. And this one is the this series. Obviously, these two will meet more in the middle, although, this one's not coming down. But he's not going to average 15 all the way through this series. Or if he does, that's a hell of a bonus for England. But the point being is that, again, I think we saw him in the last series, and there was a thought that he was finished. Only thing I would say is that generally... Oh, actually, I've got 2 things to say on this. Generally, when a bowler is done... It happens really quickly and really quite obviously. So I think Stuart Clark, Ishant Sharma, those sorts of guys, where you just see and you just like, probably can't pick him anymore. And I don't think that was quite the case with Anderson in the Ashes. The other thing that I would say is that remember, for great players, right, they can play later into their career. What often happens is, though, it robs them of their consistency, not their heights. Now, I'm not saying Anderson is at that period at the moment, because it is, just a couple of series where he hasn't been quite at his best. But it's something to watch for, because we clearly today we saw Anderson at his absolute best is still a complete menace, right? In fact, let's have a look at this. This is, I think Rohit Sharma went out to a very similar ball in the World Cup. And when this happened, I think I tweeted something about it being an unplayable ball. And so many people contacted me to say, no, it's not an unplayable ball. Sorry, sneeze came from nowhere. Well, it came from my nose, but a lot of people contact me saying, no, it's not an unplayable ball. He played on the wrong line. And the reason is that when you have a ball that is aiming at the stumps, it creates an optical illusion. So if this ball goes straight here and then moves away, it is really easy to see the away movement. Once it comes angled in and then straightens, it is very hard to see the optical illusion, right? It's just the whole Axar Patel thing of why England were having so much trouble with him when they first faced him, right? It just creates a different optical illusion. So this particular ball is absolutely magic. The ball before had ended up roughly where this blue line is, and this is where you would have expected the ball to end up, right? And this is where this blue ball, the previous ball did, and I think Rohit just plays it out on the leg side because that's where it is. So as this red ball, which is the actual ball he faces, is coming down to him, he assumes again it's going to land somewhere over here. And what happens is it straightens a little bit and it hits the top of off. This is the magic ball. This is what every fast bowler in the world wants to bowl. And full credit to Anderson here, actually, who said, let me just try to find the quote because it is quite funny. He said, I wasn't exactly trying to do what the ball did. And that's because essentially what he is trying to do here is he's trying to bowl the ball roughly at the top of the bails area. He wants some to move away. He wants some to move back in, but he's trying to keep this pressure on the batter guessing. That's the art of the wobble ball, really, is the ability to move it both ways without even the bowler being 100% sure. So he wants to give himself an opportunity of bolds and LBWs, and he also wants to give himself an opportunity of sometimes beating the outside edge or taking the outside edge and getting a catch to the keeper or slips, right? But there's something else that I really wanted to show with all this. So this ball, and I sort of cut it off in this graphic, but I think the information was over here. But this ball swung towards leg, right? So if you think about, the stumps being in the middle here, it swung this way. It didn't swing a lot. It was like 1 degree, so maybe drifted more than swung, but it moved towards the batter even more than the natural angle suggests it should have, right? Then it bounces, and it seems 1.2 degrees. So you could see now, if any batter in the world is playing the ball for the fact that it's drifting onto their pads, and that's the angle that they expect it to come on, and then it seams away violently. That's why it is so hard to play. Right? And that's why it doesn't look as magical as some other deliveries, but I promise you this is 10 times harder to play than a ball that goes out of Anderson's hand and bounces here and then swings away. Even if it swung away 4 degrees, that is a much easier ball to play than this particular delivery here. Right? It's just absolute craziness how good it was. And just worth as well, this is Kartikeya put this tweet up, that the ball to Jaiswal moved 1 degree off the seam after swinging 0.5 degrees in the air in the same direction. So that means that Anderson is legitimately getting the ball to wobble in the air and off the pitch, right? I mean, I'm taking a piss with the wobble in the air, but what I mean is he is swinging the ball a little bit and then seaming the ball. Someone asked about this recently, or maybe on one of the Wagon Wheel shows. It's a very rare ball to pull off. Yeah, we've seen players do it before. Ryan Harris is someone I've seen do it before. Mohammad Asif, I saw do it a couple of times. Stuart Clark was another bowler. It's very hard to swing a ball and seam it. If you can, the best I've ever seen is kind of the bowlers who naturally swing it in and then occasionally it hits the seam and it comes back away. That's kind of what Anderson did here. Those are almost impossible to play as a general rule. But incredible from Anderson. And just a couple of other things. It's a bit of a moving day today, but some interesting stories nonetheless. I just wanted to look at India versus early on. I thought they were very apprehensive. They looked like they didn't know what to do in this innings. And by that I mean, you know, if the scores were level, they're like, great, well, we have to make 300, 350 and get England to bat again. If they were behind, they're like, well, we have to get in front and then try and get... because they were in front, but England makes everything a little bit uncomfortable. It's like they looked a little bit more apprehensive. And I've talked about this before, but you could just see here, I think this is I'm assuming this is the LBW that was... Let me turn the lights on in this office. Nope. We're going to be doing it in the dark. Oh, there we go. I think this is the LBW that he nicked onto his pad, but I'm not 100% sure. But this is the bit that I was really, really interested in. His foot is massively not set here. And this kind of means two things generally. It either means that they're a little bit slow to the ball, or it means that just a little bit tentative, like they're not fully stepping forward. And the reason that I thought it was quite interesting is because this is Jaiswal's wicket. Right? Now, sometimes your foot can be up in the air in the way that you can see here, but it actually is because of the way that you're standing. Whereas in both of these cases, like I've watched the full video, it's because they're still just landing in the position they want to be in and they haven't fully pushed it down. I think both of these batters actually did. Eventually push their their foot down onto the ground 100%. Just something worth watching a little bit. But I feel like even when India were in front, there was still a uncomfortable nature to it. And a lot of that is just the fact that England do say things like, we'll chase anything up to 600. And then lastly, just because this has been one of the narratives of the series, CricViz sent this one over to me. I thought it was quite interesting. In this series, this is India's wickets to spin. They have gone out 33% of the time when defending and strike rotating, and they've being dismissed 67% of the time when attacking. Oh, sorry, 68%. My fault, I got that wrong. Which so far is the highest percentage of any team in India in CricViz's database. It's only from minimum of, but I think they look for minimum of 20 wickets, but what are we talking about now? Have they lost all their wickets? I can't remember if they declared, but they've lost almost double that at this stage. It's something worth looking at in the future because, again, we see India gifting wickets away or making slight errors or just keeping England in the game. I think we have to credit England a little bit here. I'm not seeing a lot when I'm watching it that suggests that England is putting a lot of pressure on, but perhaps what they are doing is manufacturing it in a way that India have to play attacking shots to score quickly, and India want to score quickly. I honestly thought when Shreyas Iyer and Shubman Gill were batting today that there was no reason why they couldn't get a lead of 450, 500. And again, they've ended up far short of that and in a situation where England thinks they can win. And that seems to be what keeps happening, right? We just keep coming back to the same thing over and over again. Anyway, that is me for the scoreboard part of the show, but obviously we're not finished. We're never finished. well, I suppose we can finish. But we'll be back after this break. If you have a comment, please put it in, or a question or anything like that. If it takes my eye, I will do it. But if you're desperate for me to answer anything or to talk about a topic for you, the best way to do that is through the Super Chats. I'm Jared Kimber. This is the Scoreboard, and I'll be back in a few moments. This is just one of our YouTube channels. We also have another one that covers the greatest stories in our sport called Good Areas. Why do India keep losing World Cups? How did Stuart Broad become a meme king? And the long sordid history of South Africa chasing. Head over to Good Areas a couple of times a week for the best stories in cricket. A few years ago, I had a panic attack after ESPN Cricinfo made me their global writer. I'd earned that position, but I also felt like a fraud at the time because I didn't really understand how I wrote. I understand that there was a process and gears and different styles and things, but how it all came together felt a little bit random. And so I began to panic like a golfer with a natural swing, worried one day I'd just end up with the yips. And would my career be over? So I took my writing apart piece by piece until I understood it. And then I figured out I could teach others all the mistakes I had learned. So I started an online course where I tried to make it as cheap as possible so people like me would be able to afford it. It's called Fans with Laptops, and heaps of people from around the world have used it so far, from first-time writers all the way through to professionals trying to improve. I started with a simple plan to make each writer the best they could be. And from the feedback I've received over the years, it seems like the course does that. But after COVID, my career changed. I came to YouTube, started podcasts, wrote emails, and formed a new career on my own going forward. So I now had something else to offer, the multimedia side of things, social media and everything else. Not to mention that I was building everything up as an independent. And so I added all of that to my course. So if you have ever wanted to work in sports as a writer or podcaster, or making videos or anything else, Fans with Laptops is the place to start. If you think you qualify as a fan and you have a laptop and you want to work in sport, click on the link. All right, welcome back to the Scoreboard. I'm still Jared Kimber. Rahul says, why wouldn't you start with your best bowlers to put maximum pressure at the end of the day's play? Yeah, I thought this was interesting myself. I thought that Bumrah and Ashwin would open the bowling. Then Kuldeep came on. And then Axar and Ashwin, was it Ashwin the 11th over or the 10th over? When they were already 50? Maybe I'm getting my numbers a little bit mistaken. But yeah, it's not the way I would have started. I was actually trading some bets on online because I'd made some bets earlier in the game, and I had the percentage of win that I wanted to make, so I was cashing them out. You know, a lot of you might know that I've been just experimenting with that just to see how it all works. They're not real bets; they're tiny amounts of money, less than the super chats that I get. But yeah, just to understand the markets better and to understand how cricket fans think things and how the cricket market thinks and all these sorts of things. And I actually got out of my bet too early because I just assumed that Bumrah and Ashwin would come on. So I think Mukesh Kumar came on. I waited for the boundaries to be hit from him. When the second boundary was hit, I cashed out. So I think from that perspective, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. Perhaps Kuldeep got Duckett in the first innings, but Mukesh Kumar, once he got hit, I don't see what the point is, unless also he was put off by the fact he was running on the wicket a little bit too much and Murray Erasmus was in his way. There was just a few things happening. I thought it's not the way I would have gone about it. I agree with you. Whether it will matter in the long run, I don't know. But I think at this stage, if it was me, I'd just be thinking, why do I want to give England good starts? If that's what England is trying to do, it's a bit like, and I'm trying to remember back to the Ashes, but it's a bit like opening the bowling with Hazelwood and Cummins rather than Stark and Boland. Not that just because you don't want them to be going for 7-8 runs and over for the first couple of overs and give England exactly what they want. Andrew says, if Gill was given out LBW before folks took the catch, would the ball be dead and the catch invalid? If he was given out LBW, is the catch invalid? Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't think so. I think it still counts. I don't think it counts as a dead ball at that point because the umpire won't have actually given it out in that situation, if I remember correctly. sorry, it's 1 p.m. and I've been up since 2 a.m. Working the overnights for this, so I should know this answer. But Andrew, I think that still counts as out. So once you work out that the edge was there before the LBW, yeah, because the edge is before the LBW, which is why the other things are dead balls. I think that's right, Andrew. But as I said, my brain's a little bit too fried for minutiae of playing conditions today. DM says, who has bigger regrets? England not picking a second quick with Anderson and Bumrah succeeding, or India not picking Sarfraz? What more can he do than average 7? Ignored minus Crawley, KL, Pant, Jadeja. Okay, I think this is a really interesting question, DM, and I'll tell you why I think it's interesting. You said England regret not picking a second seamer, and then you go on to the fact that India didn't pick Sarfraz. But why did India not pick Sarfraz? Well, part of the reason that they didn't pick Sarfraz is because they wanted 5 bowlers, which meant that Mukesh Kumar, so they could still use Mukesh Kumar. So you have one team who picked a second seamer, and one team who didn't, and because of that, these two questions actually overlap. And it just shows you how impossible it is, because Mukesh Kumar can bowl, and in England have clearly decided that they are not going to let him settle. They're going to go after him, and so he's not going to be able to bowl his best deliveries very often. So because of that, he hasn't been a factor in this particular test match. The 2 best seamers for both teams have been a factor. Mark Wood, I thought, bowled well in the last test, but outside of maybe 1 or 2 spells, really didn't put a lot of pressure back on India. So let's say Mark Wood played. Which one of the spinners would you not have played? Right? They've all had moments. They've all been important in different ways. So I don't see how in either way, I wouldn't be regretting that if I was either side, right? England would be thinking to themselves, we've still got a really good chance of winning. I don't think selection is the reason that we are behind in the game but can still chase. And India still got a lead of 400 runs with 1 fewer batters, and now they've got 5 bowlers to choose from and probably 4 frontline bowlers to use. Because Mukesh probably won't bowl too much more, in order to defend this total. Like, I think both teams would probably be, I would be pretty happy. There might be a couple of people there who'd be like, oh, maybe we should have done this, but it's not the way I would look at it. Aditya with a super chat, thank you very much. If a team loses many wickets due to bad execution of hitting bad balls, what do you blame? Lack of practice, or shots, or clarity, or both? It's an interesting one. Generally, you don't lose as many wickets as India have to bad shots. So I would say, to bad balls, not bad shots. So the way I would look at it is, are they picking the right balls to try and attack? In this test, yes, less so in the last test. If that's the case, is there a problem with the techniques of some of the shots they're playing? I don't particularly think so. Maybe with Axar and Barrett, but they're not specialist batters anyway. But even then, I don't really think so. So then I would be probably saying to myself, okay, then maybe it's just a little bit of randomness. So when I'm looking at fielding, I'm looking for things like, is this player traditionally a good fielder in the slips, or have they just put him in the slips for this series, or do they have a bunch of fielders who aren't particularly good fielders, and that's why their fielding is going? And if that's not the, how have they been in the last 2 or 3 years? And this is this is the way I would look at it. And a lot of this comes back to 3-point shooting in the NBA, right? You are going to miss somewhere around 2/3 of your 3-pointers, right? But are you taking the right kind of 3-pointers or the wrong kind of 3-pointers? And on a normal day, would these 3-pointers have dropped? That's kind of what attacking shots are, right? There's a little bit more risk attached, but there's more yield attached to that as well. And if that's the case, I would probably, if I was the analyst, I would roll with this. What I would do, though, is if there was a pattern from any particular player, that's when I would be more interested in that particular player. But because it's been a bit more team-wide, I think you just have to admit that some days this happens, and another day your team will make 5. India could have made 500 runs in either of the first 2 tests as well, right? The one thing I would go back to is that if you do follow Bazball, England have been really good at just stopping teams, batting them out of the game. So maybe a bit of credit should go to England, even if it's hard to give them credit when they keep bowling half trackers and they get it. Was it Ashwin today as well? That was the one I remember. Devang says, why has Axar been underutilized? It's a good question, Devang. Do you mean traditionally, or do you mean in this game? It's a little bit hard for me to tell there. It's the main reason he hasn't been utilised in cricket is that I don't think we knew enough about him, and he was seen as just another left-arm finger spinner who could bat and field. They really had a better version in their side in Ravi Jadeja. So I would assume that was the main reason that he was underutilised, professionally. In this particular side, right at the moment, I think he got put off more by the reverse sweeps than anyone else did. This is a wicket that should suit him a little bit more. I think there's every chance that Ashwin and Axar take between 7 and 8 wickets of the tomorrow, because they are the taller spinners. They have that ability to get the top edges if you're playing cross-batted shots and sweeps and reverse sweeps. We already saw Ben Duckett play a reverse sweep, get a top edge that realistic just could have gone straight up in the air, right? Straight up in the air. And instead flew away and went to the boundary. Axar has been, he's in the attack, but it is a 5-person attack. And generally in a 5-person attack, 2 bowlers get underbowled. So I don't really know what, Devang, your question directly relates to, but hopefully I've answered a few different parts of that there. If you're asking me why he didn't bowl earlier, that one I can't answer, because I would have bowled him earlier today. Sapta Garish, or Garish does he go by? I can't remember. He did tell me during the World Cup, but good to see you back. And thank you for the super chat. Is India struggling between being aggressive and playing time? It is a test match after all. I think India's confusion in this area is causing some periods of seemingly weird cricket from them. I do think they haven't found a gear. I'm not sure if it's playing time, because playing time kind of is a slightly different context, right? But I do feel that they haven't found that sort of... I remember the India series. The India-New Zealand series at home, and there was a flat pitch there. And Cowley, Shreyas Iyer, I'm trying to think of who else made runs in that series. But I remember thinking to myself, they're just playing this perfectly. They just know that they're going to be able to knock the ball around, make a big enough score here, in the way that they need to, and win everything over. There was a brief period when Shubman Gill and Shreyas Iyer were in form today, where I thought that might happen again. The ability to score comfortably, not cause them any too much trouble, and just walk away with the game. And I just want to have a look here. The Shreyas Iyer catch by Stokes, which generally, let's be honest, you probably get away with that fairly consistently in Test match cricket. Probably played a big part, and then right after that, Folks took a great catch. And this is, I do want to go back and give England a little bit of credit. One thing that they have been outstanding at during Bazball is bowling in the third innings, and it's very much a one-day style of bowling, right? Of just chipping away, never letting anyone feel particularly comfortable. Having said that, India have kind of felt that way all the way through. So I do feel that they were a little bit caught between two places, but if that ball lands a foot further from Ben Stokes, or his knee doesn't allow him to get, or his athleticism isn't what it used to be, well, it isn't what it used to be, but didn't allow him to get there, or whatever that may be, it's probably not a conversation we're having today, right? But they were bowled out for 250 on what looks like a fairly decent surface. And, I think it's fair it's 4 innings now, and I think in all 4 innings, considering the quality of the bowling and considering the pitches, you would have to say that India feel like they have underperformed with the bat every single time, even when they've made runs. Thank you very much for the super chat again, Girish. What have we got here? Ammon says, Zack Crawley obviously still hasn't completely come good yet, but he has had a remarkable turnaround after a very poor start. Yeah, a lot of this is as simple as he's now not under the same sort of pressure that a player of his weaknesses would normally be under. So if you go back to sort of the classic New Zealand players with, Ken Rutherford is a name that probably comes to mind a little bit. They come in, they struggle, they stay in the side because there isn't a better batting talent outside the side. they end up coming good, but even when they come good, their batting average just never really blossoms, right? Because even if they have 2 or 3, 4 good years, they've had so many years when they've been struggling. They're kind of constantly worried about being dropped and failing and staying in the side, which I know sounds weird because in some cases their problem is that they're not dropped as well. Sometimes when you're playing really bad, the best thing is for you to be dropped so you can go and work on it. Also, so it doesn't tank your overall average, so that when you do start to make runs. And I think Zack Crawley sort of hung around a little bit there. But I think he's very good at a few key skills. I'm not sure his technique is ever going to be repeatable enough that over a 5-year period he could average 40. But what they're really looking at is, can he average 38 but with a strike rate of 75 to 80 and put impact. We have seen for a while that England hasn't had the same problem with finding middle order players as they have top order players. If Zack Crawley can make the ball a little bit softer and bash it out of shape and occasionally play an innings that changes the direction of the game, that's probably better than any other opener they're going to be able to get, at least based on the last 10 years of English cricket. We know he still struggles with spin. We know he still struggles, playing the ball on the up, outside off stump, and he's going to get out normal ways as well, right? I don't think many of those things are going to go away, but maybe when he hits peak batting age, remember, he's still not there yet. He's 25, 26? What happens when he hits 27, 28? If they can keep this confidence in him and he can smack around, a few of the world's best bowlers. There's something to work on from there. Sheldon says, do you think Bumrah's bowling action is sustainable for a long period? Well, clearly not, because he keeps getting injured. His run-up is so short, which puts too much pressure on his front foot. I'm not a biomechanics expert on those sorts of things, but I think the proof is probably in what I'm saying, that he's quite often not fit. And then I think there are some... I don't think it's just the front pressure, the pressure on his front foot. I think it's also that because he doesn't have a lot of momentum coming into the crease, and it's a bit stuttery as well. There's a lot of his bowling action that comes together right at the end, which means that he's putting more pressure on his legs, his core, his back, his arm, his wrist, his elbow, his shoulder, whatever it may be. And so I think there's a lot of different things under extra pressure because of that. Let's hope he can play, 3 years of decently solid Test cricket from here, because he has the chance of going down as an all-time great. And it would be a real shame if he doesn't get to that level. I don't think we've had a bowler of his talent show us this much talent and not make it. Ryan Harris wasn't as good as Bumrah, although, comparable in many ways, even though they're very different kinds of bowlers. The ability to bowl pace accurately with sideways movement. But he's certainly, a better all format, or not just all format, but all locations bowler than Ryan Harris was. And we didn't get to see as much of Ryan Harris in other places. I can't think of anyone else. Maybe Bruce Reid is another one. Shane Bond. Shane Bond might be the best, even more comparable than Ryan Harris. It's almost better if you don't get to see them at their best, if that makes sense. Ian Bishop might be another one as well. If you saw peak Ian Bishop, there wasn't really anything Ian Bishop couldn't do. He could seam it, he could swing it. He bowled at high pace. He was fairly accurate. He was obviously very smart. He was kind of maybe the most complete of all the West Indian bowlers. And by the time he came back, he probably wasn't the bowler he could have been, because he was already maybe a little bit slower, a little bit stiffer, lost some of his natural flexibility, and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost more of a shame when you see a little bit of it. And with Jasprit Bumrah, we've seen more of him at the top, but then not always around. So it would be a huge shame if that happens. It could just be that he's a fast bowler as well. Sometimes you're just a fast bowler and it doesn't work for you. Fat Hill says, can India be criticised for playing too slowly towards the end of the innings, given that they're in a dominant position? They probably wanted England to bat on a slightly worse pitch, but also fear of Bazball. Trying to think. So who did they have? They had Ashwin there. I think that's his natural game. Axar Patel, Shrikar Barrett and Ashwin, I would say that's probably more their natural games. Axar Patel, maybe less so. So you might have a point there. I'm just having a look at Shikha Barrett's strike rate in first-class cricket. It's actually not too bad. Averages, he's got a strike rate of 59. I didn't realize it was that high. He doesn't look like one of those plucky wicket keepers who always scores everywhere. But maybe he is more so in first-class cricket. Strike rate of 54 in Test cricket. Today, obviously, he got stuck a little bit. That's fine. And then Ashwin, I'm going to assume that there is an element of his strike rate in Test cricket is 54, right? Overall, and he was striking today at roughly 47, 48. So it's within the range. I would suggest they've gone a little bit slower. I thought perhaps they were thinking I'm trying to think of how many balls. We probably had about, 5 or 6 balls keep a little bit low earlier. Maybe they were thinking the more time is actually more important than getting runs. So in a normal situation, you just want 40 more runs, right? But if the pitch is dead flat and what you really want is just for a few more balls to go low, maybe you want to just take more time out. And perhaps if they batted, I'm just have to go back. How did they go there? So they lost their. When did Shubman Gill went out? So Shubman Gill went out in the 56th over. So they get another 20 odd overs at that stage, where they put on another 40 runs. So maybe they're thinking to themselves, let's bat time until the second new ball when the ball gets harder. It might also be a soft ball thing, by the way, but let's wait until the new ball gets harder, then we can maybe get a couple away there, and they just never got to that period. But I wasn't sitting here thinking to myself, they've made a huge mistake with the way they're playing. Human Clone says, if Rayan is a finger spinner, Gill would not have dominated him. Anyone vary speed of the ball is a threat for Gill. Well, to be fair, wrist spinners, in fact, Rayan's varied the speed a lot. It's generally what you find, and you need a spinner who can deceive him in the air. Well, generally, wrist spinners deceive in the air more than finger spinners, and the reason for that is the overspin, which Rayan Ahmed definitely gets. I have found, when you go through the records, that there's probably about 4 different kinds of players who play spin. There are the players who only like it when the ball spins into them. There are players who only like wrist spin or only like finger spin. There are players who cannot play spin no matter what you do. And then there are players who are kind of a weird mixture. Sometimes they might like it when a wrist spinner spins the ball into them, but a finger spinner spins it away from them. And there's all these sort of weird sort of subcategories. Or they might be just good at one particular kind of spin, whatever that may be. So most players kind of fit those genres, right? And he could just be someone who prefers wrist spin. It is... I think I always found wrist spin much easier to play when I use my feet a lot. You know, the ability to sort of come down the crease to a wrist spinner, because they are a little bit slower than finger spinners, meant that, you know, I could come down and defend, and then if I got to the pitch of the ball, I could, play through the line. Whereas with finger spinners, I always felt like I was a little bit too slow with my feet. And when I started playing the sweep is when I started enjoying finger spinners a lot more, because they don't get the overspin. And so you don't even, kind of against a finger spinner, I almost feel like you don't even have to pick the right ball to sweep. Whereas against a wrist spinner, I feel like, because of the overspin, you need to be a little bit, they need to have overpitched a little bit more to be able to play that. So it could be things like that. Everyone has a slightly different thing that they enjoy doing, right? Ayosh says, you recently had Tim Wingmore on about fast bowling and what Australia and England have done with workloads, optimal performance. What have they specifically done with Anderson? They stopped him playing white ball cricket. To go through everything they've done with Anderson, I actually did a podcast on what they did with Anderson, and I forget the name of it, but it was an early red inker with a guy I think was a former cricket writer, might have written for the Financial Times or... God, I've completely forgotten his name, but I know he writes for more a business thing, and he sat down with Ashwin during COVID. Well, you can't really sit down with anyone during COVID. He sat down with Ashwin on a Zoom, during the COVID period. They understand biomechanics a lot more. They changed his diet, although he's still not, maybe maybe a lot of it is also quite natural with him. They monitor the way he trains, so how many balls he bowls at training, all those sorts of things. They track him in the field. They look for his red lines. They've rested him a lot. So have a look at how many series he doesn't play all the test matches in, and he's been doing that for a very, very long time. I'm trying to think what else. Playing him on surfaces they think will suit him, not over bowling him. So even when you look, I think traditionally he had a very high overs per game workload, even when England had 5 bowlers. Even in the Flintoff days, early Ben Stokes days, he still, Anderson, and bowled a high percentage of overs. They eased that down. They eased the amount of overs he bowled away from home, which caused them some issues because unfortunately Stuart Broad also wasn't as great away from home. So there was actually quite a few reasons for that. Udit says, do you think Duckett doesn't trust his defence at all? Well, we know he doesn't because he said that a reverse sweep is as good as defence. And it should be something that he works on. Do you think that Ben Duckett has not been working on his defensive shots? Like, I think when we say stuff like that, we have to understand that this is a fully grown boy, right? I know he looks small, but he's, 30, 31? Like, he's in his peak batting era at the moment. He's probably got another couple of years before we see any kind of slide from that point of view. This is the finished version of Ben Duckett. The man can't leave, and he doesn't have a great forward defensive shot, right? And if you get it back in a length outside off stump, he's always going to nick it, right? That's who he is. He's doing what top athletes do. They realize what their flaws are, and they try and maximize their ceiling. And that's exactly what Ben Duckett has been doing, is doing, will continue to do. That's why he plays the reverse sweep. And is Crawley now a good batter? No, I'm way off thinking that he can be a consistent threat. And consistent is the word. But he's a disruptive batter, and he causes issues. And he's much better, I think, at accentuating his strengths now than he was when he was young. And again, comes with a little bit of maturing, obviously some good coaching and everything else. We've got a couple more super chats, so I will get to those after a break. I'm Jared Kimber. This is the Scoreboard. If you are desperate for another question, super chat's probably your way to go, but I'll go through the chats and see if there's anything else in here as well. I'll be back in a moment.
A lot of people complain that I'm not a former cricketer, and so that I don't really know the game. Well, you know what they can't claim? That I don't know desks. I've been using desks for years. I'm a collector of desks, old and new, and I am sitting on a new one right now. I am the Don Bradman of sitting at desks. So when I tell you that the E7 Pro next generation height adjustable desk from FlexiSpot is legit, this is like Michael Jordan talking to you about sneakers. This desk holds 160 kilograms. It is as stable as anything I've ever seen, and it has under desk cable management. But really, the main skill here is that this desk rises and falls at the push of a button, and it moves super quick. And it has so many settings that remember your favorite heights. It really does it all. And I could not recommend the E7 Pro from FlexiSpot anymore, even though I am currently sitting on one of FlexiSpot's BS12 Pro multifunctional, adjustable, upgraded fabric, ergonomic chairs. My butt and computer have never been happier than when using one of FlexiSpot's products. So get over to their page right now for big savings.
All right, welcome back to the Scoreboard. Just a friendly reminder that if you keep putting the same question all the time, you will be banned. Right? I get to the questions I can. If I miss your question, it's just because either I can't answer it today, it's not particularly on topic, or there are better questions around, or there are a million questions and I can only get to what I can get to. But we've got a few more coming in and a couple more super chats. But that's the end of the normal chats. If you're desperate for one more question, super chat is the only way to get through to me now. Chitra says, what are the odds for a 4th day masterclass tomorrow? Surely he's due a big one. Well, I don't know if he's broken his finger. I don't know if I've got an update from the team yet on his finger. But no, it's probably not very good considering he was off the field for a long period of time. Be very interesting to see if he can bat normally and everything else. But yeah, Chitra at the moment, I'd say the odds are long, if I'm being honest. I haven't looked at the. Would it have? Wait, let's have a look here. I'll probably bring this up. Let's have a look at Bet365. Oh, it's not on my phone anymore. Yeah, I wonder. He probably should be a little bit longer now just because of the injury, but I don't know how it's going to affect him. Sai says, why are these tracks flatter than past India series? I think there was certainly conversations from within India that some of the wickets had got so random that teams that shouldn't beat them had beaten them. That was more a case of Australia, but I don't think they wanted. I think they thought on flat pitches there was no way India, there's no way that England could beat India. It's certainly what I thought as well. I think that's an element of it. The World Test Championship, sometimes it's towards the end of the World Test Championship, the same as we see in county cricket and first-class cricket competition, Shield cricket. Sometimes it's towards the end of those when you are desperate for points that you start making result-friendly wickets. So I don't know if that was a part of it as well. Also, where the grounds are being played, like we have seen wickets like this at times, although you're right, the vast majority have been quite different. But there was a fairly flat surface played in the last test against Australia? The first test? The second test? One of the tests against New Zealand was certainly flat. I remember that. I'm trying to think if I've seen any other flat ones of recent times. So there have been some other wickets. This isn't flat, of course. This is a really good wicket. It's still doing really, really well. I would like it to play up a little bit more tomorrow just because, I like balls rolling along the ground. I think that's funny, especially in a chase. I kind of like a chase to be a pitch where the middle of the pitch is dead flat and then just every now and again it keeps low. I've always found those the best chases. Also gives both teams a chance, right? But yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons. I wonder if also there is an element of, I know one of the other reasons that they were doing that with their wickets was they were trying to ensure that Jadeja and Ashwin had a slightly lower workload. But of recent times with Axar playing, it doesn't make as much sense to do it with all three of them. And the best way of explaining this is, and this series hasn't been a great example of it, partly because India haven't gone on to make the sort of runs that they should have in any of the occasions. But if you have a look at Ashwin's first innings average in India, and you have a look at his second innings average in India, in the first innings he is so far and ahead of the rest of the world's spinners. But in the second innings he's not. And I think Jadeja is quite similar. Don't give the other spinners the advantage. Don't give them that. Like Tom Hartley, it's kind of like bowling by rote, right? He doesn't have all the other super skills of a spinner at the moment, but he is tall and he puts revs on it and he can get it roughly in the area that he needs to. Make him bowl brilliant balls on a wicket rather than just allowing him to come in and roll the ball over and over again. Who have we got here? Muku Rakesh. Samate's put a question in, but it's not come up. So if someone can find the super chat there. Aman says, should it be appreciated how remarkable it is that English cricket has suddenly found spinners that can take wickets, even if they bowl many bad balls? Well, Jack Leach and Moeen Ali certainly took wickets. Moeen Ali has one of the better strike rates of a finger spinner of all time. It's just that he leaked runs. Jack Leach over the last couple of years, certainly, I would say pre-Bazball, I would have only used him against right-handers in Asia. And I can't remember if it was Jeetan Patel who changed his action or if it was someone else, but he had a slight tweak to the technical. He was kind of rolling the ball a little bit more before. Had a slight tweak to his technique to get more revs on the ball. And I think when fit, he's bowled really, really well. So I don't think, Moeen Ali and Jack Leach took a lot of wickets in India last time from memory. Don Best took wickets as well. I don't think that was repeatable and probably has been proven not to be repeatable. But so they haven't really had trouble finding spinners who could take wickets. Their problem has been finding an all-format spinner or finding a spinner who can keep pressure on all the time. That's really been the issue that they've had. I don't think their issue has been finding spinners who can take wickets. It's probably finding, at his best, Jack Leach should have been like a low-end version of Nathan Lyon, right? Obviously, nowhere near that kind of level, and he was never going to have that kind of career. But the ability to play kind of everywhere, and when he's not going for wickets, at least have the ability not to go for too many runs, be fairly accurate, keep pressure on for the other end. I think when Jack Leach was struggling, that's what he wasn't doing. I think he became more of that bowler of recent times. And Moeen Ali is almost a one of one when it comes to bowlers. One of the more baffling bowlers in cricket history. He just is an attacking finger spinner who played a really long career, who was probably a better bat but never made any runs. Arahant says, India have been really below in the 2 test matches as a bowling and batting unit. Bumrah bailed them out in both tests. And Ben Stokes as captain is thrilling to watch. He's been below in both the test matches. Yeah, I think England, and we saw this with Australia, even when Australia were probably the better team, certainly in the early part of that Ashes, England never let them get away. So we have to be honest here and say that since Bazball, for all the talk about how exciting England are, it's also their ability to stay in games that that a normal team would just be out of, which is also quite remarkable from them. But yeah, India hasn't been at their best. They're currently missing Shami, Pant, Kohli, KL Rahul. Am I missing someone else? Jadeja. Is that everyone? I think so. Okay, so that's let's say that England didn't have access to. Well, maybe Stokes is not fair, but let's say England didn't have Stokes, Root, Wood, Leach, Folks. I don't know if that's completely comparable, but you see where I'm going here. You know, all these things matter. I think I got all those bowlers and batters right there. Samit says, thanks for the super chat again. What would be the rationale for picking Mukesh Kumar over Siraj? What differentiates Mukesh from Siraj? Mukesh is more of a swing bowler, naturally. So I think they were thinking there might be some movement in the air here. But the fact that Siraj is not playing and they rested him, I would say that the bowling coaches or the physio or the support staff were suggesting that he was running close to red. So when the bowlers are in those sorts of situations, especially with another bowler out, they might have thought it was better not to lose Siraj all the way. That is my guess. And who knows with India? We barely ever get any updates as it is. Let alone that kind of information. But that was my thinking with it. But yeah, just a slightly different kind of bowler. One is more hit the deck, wobble ball bowler, and another one is, and a little bit faster. And the other one is more of a swing bowler. Maybe they thought that would be handy, maybe near the beach, more swing. We've seen reverse. To be honest, Anderson and Bumrah haven't really tried to swing the ball that much. They've been using the wobble ball and then reverse. So I don't know if it, and Mukesh has just had some issues, and England have played him quite well also. But that would be my guess, mate. And then the last super chat from Rupesh, who says, what's wrong with Rohit's test batting nowadays? Finished, mate. He's gone. He's done. Nothing. He's just getting out would be my answer to that, probably. Like, I'm sure there is, we just saw him play the World Cup of his life, right? And make an incredible innings in T20 cricket. Last year, in 8 innings, he averaged 42, well above what most openers would do. 2021, he averaged 48. So, he's coming down from... He had quite a few really ridiculous years, didn't he? Probably what... I'm trying to remember when he starts to open. Have I got that here? When does he start to open regularly? Is it 2019? I think that's right. So he was averaging, as an opener, wasn't he, mid-50s, high 50s, maybe even 60s at times? I think there's probably a normal regression from that as well. Teams have now seen him open quite a bit. They're probably planning for him a little bit more. But it's a weird question to ask today because I'm trying to think of how Don Bradman would play that ball. I think Don Bradman's still probably trying to turn that ball. I should say, I think Don Bradman's first instinct is still that ball's going down leg side, and I can tuck that away. Perhaps Don Bradman, I was going to say had a straighter bat, but I don't think it's fair to say that Rohit didn't have a completely straight bat either. And Bradman would have played it under his eyes. Like, it's a great ball. If you've missed the start of the show, Rupesh, go back and I talk about that ball. I'm not too worried about that. His general form isn't a problem, just hasn't made runs in Test cricket recently, but not that long ago he was making lots of them. No, for me, just not an issue. But that's it for the Super Chats. So that is it for the scoreboard. Again, thank you so much. We will be back tomorrow. Could be an incredible day's cricket, let's be honest. I think what will happen is there will be times at which England make it look comfortable and everyone gets really nervous they're going to do the big chase and it probably falls off. But the wicket is fairly solid, right? I mean, India's 250 or 230, whatever it was they ended up with, is massively under par considering the bowling attack they were going up against on this kind of wicket, especially without Joe Root bowling. But this is a monumental chase. I saw bookmakers who had them England down at 3-1. I was like, I don't know. If I'm a bookmaker, I'm feeling much more confident at 5 and 6-1 and taking money off people. I think at that amount, and I think that's what the trading markets were looking at as well. But the truth is, with Bazball, you don't really know, right? Like it's such a random way of playing cricket. Who would have thought Rayan Ahmed would have come out to bat at number 3 in a chase of 400? They are thinking about cricket in such a different way. I love the fact that they're excited by the opportunity, which is, I think, it's just a smarter way of playing cricket, right? You think about the way that cricket used to be. When I remember everyone was always afraid of chasing, especially in red ball cricket, whether you play club cricket all the way through to Test cricket. And now it's like, well, we've got an opportunity to do something incredible here. Let's use our skills and try and maximize things. But at the same time, as I said before, I expect Ashwin to take wickets and probably Axar to take wickets as well. It's going to be very, very tough for England if either of them are the kind of bowler they want to be. But that's up to England to reverse whack them out of shape, I suppose. But that's it from me on a Scoreboard. Jared Kimber. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Please come back every day of this series. We're only 2 tests in. We've got like 3 more tests to go. It's crazy nonsense. It's all happening here. See you next time.
NordVPN know nothing about knuckleballs, but they can help you with online safety. If you need a VPN, use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount and 4 months for free. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, which is risk-free. The link is in the show notes. So stop thinking about knuckleballs for 2 minutes and go to nordvpn.com/Kimber and get your deal.
Support us on Patreon. Join for exclusive perks like AMAs, live calls with me, and a vibrant Discord community. Enjoy ad-free content, early podcast episodes, and access to my emailer. Plus behind-the-scenes stuff. We've built our channel on Patreon support, so a huge thanks to everyone who has helped. In cricket, I don't believe in momentum, but when it comes to my social media videos, I like Memento. Its AI listens to me so that I don't have to, and then it can chuck in GIFs and subtitles and make it all fit all the different kinds of social media sizes. Memento does it all. It slices, it dices, and it resizes all of your hottest takes, your coldest facts, and your weirdest vibes. Grab it today and make your content start smashing the ball all around social media.